Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
Guys, I want to take you on a little bit of a journey this morning to the place where I was born and raised, a little town called Odessa, Texas. It is known also as the Permian Basin. Now, the land around Odessa, Texas, is rather unremarkable. It's flat. It goes for miles and miles. You can see to the horizon as you stand on the plains of the Permian Basin. But it was once sort of a sea, an ocean. And today, because there was once a sea and ocean there, deep beneath the land in the Permian Basin is a lot of oil. In fact, maybe 1% of the nation's of the world's known reserves are in the Permian Basin. It is the source of many jobs. It is the source of a great deal of the oil that you use in your car every day. And right now, there is great concern that the drilling in the Permian Basin, which we need desperately, may have to come to a halt because your U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department is concerned about a small 4-inch lizard. Joining us here on the phone now is Ben Shepperd, the president of the Permian Basin Petroleum Association, a man who has brought this to our attention. Mr. Shepperd, thank you very much for joining us here on the Morning Majority.
Good morning, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here today.
All right. What is your concern, and what are you trying to do to stop the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service?
Well, thanks for your interest, and it's great to talk to somebody who does have an idea of what it's like out here in far west Texas. As you laid it out, our concern is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Obama administration, is moving forward with an endangered species listing on the sand dune lizard in the midst of such historic unemployment and high gasoline prices and international instability. We're concerned, number one, that there's absolutely no supporting science to warrant a listing, and the results would be potentially devastating to not only unemployment but for increased oil prices and increased gasoline.
If it is listed as endangered, what would that mean to the oil industry? How would it practically affect what you do there?
Well, it could mean that massive areas of land would be essentially off limits for a period of time until such permits to enter the area could be granted from Fish and Wildlife, and we don't know if that period of off limits would be 2 years, could be up to 5 years.
And so you could lose jobs and the ability to provide oil.
Absolutely, we could. I mean, right now we are hovering around 5% unemployment. Consistently, we have been for the last 3 years. We're a bright star on the economy right now, one of the few. I mean, you know, there's also potential. It's not just oil and gas, but potential for wind energy and solar. And you know, you look at what's happening with Solyndra and these kinds of things, and we do certainly feel like we're being picked on out here.
Yeah. What is the science that they base the call on about whether to put an animal on the endangered species list, and how do you feel about how the studies of the species numbers has been conducted in Texas? And further, do you have is there a way to sort of testify or to add comment to the Fish and Wildlife's decision, or is it just them?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think there's some underlying problems with the way the Endangered Species Act is implemented, and I hope that maybe this issue could shine a light on that, and maybe we could address some of those in Congress. But with respect to the science, it is shoddy at best. For example, there have been, less than a half dozen studies done, and by studies I mean scientists going out and actually trying to locate lizards. Less than 1% of the over 1 million acres has even been studied. I've visited with Fish and Wildlife multiple times. I've visited with some of the biologists, and they don't know how many lizards there are today. They don't know how many there used to be, and nor do they know how many there should be, what constitutes a viable population. So what they fall back on is that the habitat is shrinking, and even that evidence we have analyzed and determined. Even Fish and Wildlife's own studies, they cite two different studies. One study back in the 80s looked at just brush, amounts of acres and brush, the shinnery oak type brush, and then they compared that to a study back in the 90s that looked at sand dune and brush habitat together, and they determined that there had been a 40% loss. When we contacted the researchers, the two studies were looking at two different things, so even their claims that the habitat has shrunk are false.
Did you say that they've only looked at 1% of the land?
Less than 1%.
Less than 1% of the land.
And by the way, the Permian Basin, 115,000 square acres.
So there could be a bunch of lizards kicked back, getting suntans and drinking shiners somewhere in a big lizard resort somewhere in this area.
They hang out in the shade. They're only primarily active in the spring when it's quite nice out here, a little bit windy.
Right.
And don't know, if they like beer or not. But they're, I've been out there, and anecdotally, people tell me they see them everywhere. I've seen them without looking very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. So the other part of your question, we've submitted comments. There's like any other regulation, there's official comment periods and whatnot. But we're working with our county officials are really concerned about this too, because the taxes paid, the local job impact, and those kinds of things. And we've had some meetings, and we're trying to bring forth better science and get them to look at better science. And I think if they do that, they can only make one decision, and that is not to list.
I hope you're right. But we've seen the Fish and Wildlife Service in action for the last couple of months, and we've all been kind of shaking our heads here in Washington saying, what are they doing at the national level? This decision comes down in December. It's possible that this could really affect you guys.
Well, it is, and I think, hopefully there'll be some type of, if it does occur, if the worst-case scenario that they do make this listing determination, that maybe there'll be some backup plan that they would sort of fast-track permits and allow us to continue operating. Mm-hmm. But we have, at this point, there's no agreement. There's nothing for us to hang our hat on other than that we're facing a potential shut-in.
Right.
Well, if you drive between Odessa and El Paso, you're going through most of the Permian Basin, and it's like straight-line highway for as far as you can see. And it's 115,000 square miles. I believe that the oil rigs and the lizards will have enough room so that they can coexist.
Well, Brian, as you well know, we've been drilling oil wells and gas wells out here since the 30s, and today there are plenty of lizards out there. So we hope we can continue to coexist.
And horny toads as well.
All right, Ben, good to have you in the program. Best of luck to you.